Hello, this is the voice of Benjamin Kennedy again, and this is part two of Making a Monster. And this part is on making the costume pieces. So, as you can see, and by the way, this is months after I cut out the pattern pieces because I was busy doing other things in the meantime. I got my half-inch upholstery foam, and right now I'm cutting out the torso pieces. The general theory that I came up with for making this costume is to cut out 3 exact duplicate pieces from the same pattern piece for each part, and then cut them to fit together, and you would have a pretty well bodied monster, like a pretty full bodied creature. And it worked to a certain extent, but because the foam is soft and kind of, not strong, the shape didn't really hold exactly the way I wanted it to. So the end result is a bit more two-dimensional than I wanted. But this was definitely a good proving grounds for the theory. It did prove my theory out, and making 3 pieces and putting them together worked out pretty well. There's enough space in the costume, and it fits pretty well. So this is just an example of how I was cutting the costume, and just like the patterns, I tried to make sure I was getting the outside edge of the marker lines so I could have some extra space to work with if anything went wrong. It's always better to cut bigger rather than smaller because you can cut your pieces down, but you can't size them back up very easily anyway. And right here, I'm starting work on cutting the pieces so that they'll fit together properly. It's male and female basically. You make a male part and you make a female part, and they fit together. So right now I'm cutting out the female part, and for each costume part, basically the centerpiece, what I thought would basically be the piece that would face frontwards, ended up being the male piece, and the other 2 pieces had female parts connect to it. And then, of course, the 2 pieces on the sides had to fit together properly. So one piece ends up being a male piece, and another ends up being a female piece on the back. So this is what they looked like when they were all done and able to be mashed up together. So you can kind of look at it and get an idea of how the pieces should go together. So in this clip, I'm out in the garage, and what I'm doing here is I'm putting on some non-flammable contact cement, applying it to the seams where the pieces join together, so that way, there's not much of a chance that they're gonna, break down and tear apart on me while I'm wearing the costume. I used to not worry about that, but after a few times, I learned that glues do not stay solid very long. They soften up, and they will tear apart eventually, and you don't want that when you're trying to film a movie. So this is me making the tail, and I thought I'd show this part because the tail was made out of a kind of a slightly different material. It's still half-inch thick foam, but it's a sort of fabric-backed type of foam. It's got this thing that I think is called Dacron applied to the back of it, and it's a bit more solid. It's got a bit more substance to it than the regular polyurethane. So it ended up being a good material to use for the neck, the tail, and the feet because it's a bit more durable. So at this point, I have all the costume pieces assembled in the flat, which basically means they're not assembled as a whole tube. And I'm using them to create the fabric pieces that are going to go inside and outside of the costume. The fabric I'm working on right now is a soft cotton fabric, and it's going to be used as the inside liner of the costume so that I'm not constantly exposed to open foam, which can be pretty allergy inducing, and also give me a nice soft surface for my skin to go on, when inside of the arms and stuff. But for the outside layer, I used canvas, and that gave a nice rough texture like skin or something, so it worked out pretty well. This is me cutting the fabric that's going to go inside the torso, and it's basically the same process, as before, trying to cut outside of the marker lines to give myself some room to make some mistakes. Now we're at the head, and unfortunately I don't have any video of me making the head because it was a head I had made a couple of years previously. But basically it's just two 2-inch thick pieces of foam put together for the upper jaw. It's a triangular shape, and then I added eyebrows onto it and cut some eye holes into it so I could fit some plastic stocking balls in as eyeballs. The bottom jaw is a separately cut piece of 2-inch thick foam made to match up to the upper jaw. And what you're seeing me do right now is add, the piece for the end of the nose, so that way it's not this exposed seam. And right now you can see I'm about to cut it to size, so yeah, it can fit in and blend in and look like it's all one piece. So there's no actual video of me cutting out the dorsal plates of the fins, but it's the same process as the rest of the costume. It's just making a cardboard pattern and then cutting out the foam pieces according to that.